And it's time for the highly anticipated UFC debut of Japanese super prospect Yusaku Kinoshita. He got a win in a Dana White's Contender Series main event this past summer over Jose Enrique, who represented Nova União. It was a giant win. He looked great. He is now the Japanese Conor McGregor. That's what they're calling him on the streets. And he's taking on the American Adam Fugitt, one of only 3 Americans on this card that includes Devin Clark and Derek Lewis. And if you look at it for Fugitt, took his UFC debut on 9 days' notice. He replaced Ramiz Brahimaj, and he took on Michael Morales. And you talk about super prospects. I mean, the prospect out of Ecuador is that guy. Fugitt beat him in the first round and looked really good in doing it. And that's the thing. You consider it for the American in this fight out of Oregon, out of Art of War MMA. He's got a really weird southpaw stance. He crouches into it like a creeper.
Like a tiny goblin, man.
And what I love out of him, and it's on his UFC bio, he loves to throw the left kick out there. And he's one of those guys going to kick you to the legs, to the body, and he's going to kick you to the head. And it's all kind of from the same angle, so he can kind of disguise it well. It's not like he's throwing teeps up the middle or front kicks up the middle. It is that left roundhouse. But the greatest part about it is where he was able to punch his ticket into the UFC. He beat Dana White's Contender Series veteran Solomon Renfro over with LFA, and it was one of their upsets of the year. He was a big-time underdog, like a plus 350 in that fight, and he's landing that kick, and he's landing that kick, and he's mixing it to the 3 levels. Renfro walks in, he hits him with like a shoulder roll right hook and drops him, and then he gets the win. So for Fugitt, you might know him because I've talked all about his striking. He was a 2-time US EACA Muay Thai champ, CMTA champ, MTG champ, SAAAS Muay Thai champ, and the X1 World Events welterweight champ in MMA. But probably one of the best, most underrated parts of his game is the fact that he's not a bad offensive wrestler, and his grappling's very good too. So Fugitt's one of those guys at 34. It does feel like they're kind of feeding him to the prospects because he fought Morales. Looked good in the first round. Second round, Morales gets back into it. Third round, takes his back and submits him.
You know who he is. He's the new Tyrion Ware.
Yeah, he might be the Tyrion Ware. Now, we'll see if they give him as many shots as Tyrion Ware. But for Yusaku Kinoshita, I say he's kind of like the Japanese Conor McGregor, because in the third round of his fight against Jose Enrique, he does like the pull back left hand and drops him and finishes him. So he didn't just one punch knockout. He did it to finish it up with a little bit of ground and pound. So it wasn't like beating Aldo, but both guys out of Nova União and Jose Enrique as well as Jose Aldo. But if you do look at it in this fight, Matt, I think the interesting wrinkle for both of these guys is the fact that it's southpaw versus southpaw. And this is a fight that was announced way back in October. October 31st, Nolan Kings posted this was going to be a fight. So really, really long fight camps for both of these guys. They better know their game plans inside and out.
Fugitt's weird, because he is kind of stiff for how good of a striker he is, and I don't mean that as a negative. It is a little wonky. He doesn't strike in a way of like a Vicente Luque or like an Anderson Silva, where it's all very fluid movements, where it all goes together. There is a bit of a wonkiness to it. There's a bit of a hitch to his step, but it is in a positive way. Like when he is able to mix in his kicks with his combos, he does look like a very, very talented striker from the outside. I do worry about him, especially in this matchup, if it does go into boxing range to where it just kind of neglects his kicks completely, because if he is able to fight at the outset of his kicking range, again, he could have a lot of success. But if Kinoshita can get on the inside, negate the kicks, check some of them, go to the body with his own boxing, and then start to implement his own combinations, I think Kinoshita has a decided advantage with his hand speed in this matchup, and I think he will be able to use that, because if Fugitt's not able to mix in his combinations with his kicks and with his knees up the middle, I think it could be a long night for him. Now, I brought this up multiple times. If he fights like Cowboy did when he fought Eddie Alvarez years and years and years ago, when you're fighting the shorter, speedier kind of boxer type, use the knees up the middle. It's going to keep him at distance, keep him at bay, prevent him from crashing the distance as much. But I'll be interested to see if Adam goes for many, if any, takedowns in this matchup, because I could see him struggling, especially early on with some of the explosiveness of Kinoshita, but I could see him start to use his wrestling almost more as the fight goes on. I just don't know if that's going to be one of those things where he could have success with it, but it also kind of leaves him open for some shots that could be damaging. It just might be one of those double-edged sword kind of tactics.
Well, and I mean, Kinoshita, as being such a highly hyped prospect, he made his amateur debut at 16, similar to Tatsuro Taira's also on this card. All finishes in every single one of his wins. His only loss, a second round DQ loss at Rise and Trigger #1. And in that fight, and I'll throw the picture up there, he beat breaks off his opponent, drops him, tries to land a soccer kick, and then he grabs the cage and starts stomping the guy's head in. The referee waves it off. Kinoshita jumps up on the cage. He's celebrating. They're celebrating him as the winner. And then he's kind of like that guy at BKFC last weekend with the jigsaw mask that thought that he won, but he lost by DQ. Kinoshita loses because foot stomps are legal in Rizin, but cage grabs are not. So that's how he ended up losing that fight. If you look at it, even in just the fight that he had on Dana White's Contender Series, 28 shots to the head, 11 to the body, 23 to the leg against Jose Enrique, a guy who had 3 inches of height and 7.5 inches of reach on Kinoshita. And what I like out of Kinoshita is he did have a hard time in that fight, like where he was chasing Enrique at the start, and then finally he was able to ease into it, wait and bait with his counter shots, and that was a big thing for Kinoshita when he was fighting on the regional scene. It was a lot of counter striking, a lot of, kind of trying to bring his opponent in towards him. He fought with Pancrase, he fought with Rizin, he fought a decent level of competition, or at least guys that had, a lot of wear on those tires. But you consider it in a matchup like this, Matt, Fugitt's one of those guys that's going to offer him a tough challenge. And for Fugitt, the only losses that he has as a pro, one to Michael Morales, who I think of very, very highly, one to Kalen Hill that was on Dana White's Contender Series, and one to Austin Vanderford, who challenged for a Bellator belt against Gegard Mousasi last year. Now, for Fugitt, and this is kind of my wrap-up point before we talk about the odds and the Topology votes, Fugitt's fought a southpaw before. It was Kalen Hill, and if you go and watch that fight, Hill goes southpaw jump knee, and in the middle of the jump knee turns it into a Superman punch and knocks Fugitt out cold in that one. So that is, listen, a tough loss.
I thought you were going to say that is an area or a path to victory. I was like, I doubt that's going to happen twice in the man's career.
And Kinoshita's probably not going to do it. For Kinoshita, his last time out, he got eye poked so many times. So he's got to watch out for it in this fight. But I do like the 3-level approach from both of these guys. I do like the volume a little bit more out of Kinoshita. I like his wrestling. We haven't seen it on Contender Series, but we did see it on the regional scene. So again, when it does come down to this one, Kinoshita almost a 3-1 favorite in the matchup. We have a look at the Topology votes. They're surprised to us as they are to you. I think the fans are going to side with our prospect out of Japan in this one. I'm going to say over under 90% Kinoshita.
I think it'll be under 90 though.
You think it's going to be under 90? Oh, it is. 944 total votes, 85% Kinoshita, 75% by knockout for the 15% that have Fugitt, 51% by decision, 30% by the knockout. I mean, Fugitt's always got the forward pressure, and he has really good counter striking in his own right. Again, I think southpaw versus southpaw could be tricky for either guy, so hopefully they got good looks in their camps. For me, I like Kinoshita in this matchup, but I don't know. He is a pretty big favorite, but I do like the fact that he is a very well-rounded fighter. Fugitt's going to offer him every single question that we're going to need answered, though.
Exactly. This is a great matchup that you want prospects to have, because it's not really an underhand toss of a fight. Yes, Kinoshita is a favorite, but there's a world where Fugitt looks really good, hits him with a liver kick, really test him in this matchup. So I think it's going to be a really entertaining fight, one where we're going to learn a lot more about the prospect, but I still think Kinoshita is probably going to win this one.
Both of us going with Japan's Yusaku Kinoshita to get the win in the matchup. We have some big-time fights on this card. Daun Jung's taking on Devin Clark in the co-main event. Derek Lewis and Sergey Spivac in the main. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.